All right, so we are talking today about the legal infrastructure behind your businesses that scale. And like Linda said, how to stop those revenue leaks before they turn into those disastrous things that may interrupt your operations and your business, preventing you from scaling. So, what we're covering today are real problems. When you have that gut wrenching feeling when an invoice is 30 days past due, you've already done the work, you've provided the deliverable, and you're really wondering, are you going to get paid? That exhaustion from continually explaining to your clients what you're doing, what you're not going to do, it, what is actually included in your scope, or that pain from plastering on a smile for that really difficult client because you just want that check. And actually, you're really wanting for this project to be over. So, as Linda said, there are three main leaks that I see in founder contracts. And one, that is the way that money moves. Your projects should be tied to how you're getting paid and not getting paid at the end where you're having to chase your money. Two, scope creep. Every client or every founder that I know has had to deal with scope creep where they are doing more and getting paid less. We're going to stop that today. And then lastly is informed clients. Good paying clients come from proper information and organization of how you onboard them. So Linda has done a great job of introducing me, but I am Asia Wright, the founding attorney of the Right Choice Firm. And my goal in creating the Right Choice Firm is to provide you with enterprise thinking for growing businesses. I was trained at Deloitte, where I audited Fortune 500 companies, to understand operational risk and specifically what we're talking about today, how money moves and really how it impacts your bottom line. I then gained this general counsel experience when I worked in big law, from employment and business litigation to mergers, acquisitions, finance, and real estate deals. I bring all of that knowledge to you so that you have a strategic legal partner for women-led service-based businesses. The pattern that I saw from accounting and law working with these big companies is that corporations don't rely on hope. They rely on probability and they protect themselves in their contracts so that they can continue to scale. Founders are not taught to do the same thing, and that is where they often get capped. So we're here to stop that. Your revenue leaks rarely look dramatic at first. It starts with late cash. If you have $120,000 in annual revenue, but 20% of your invoices are paid late, you've got over $20,000 sitting outside your business when you've already made the effort. You've already spent the capital in your operations. That's real and you feel it. Free extra services. Your scope creep adds 15 to 20% of uncompensated working capital and deliverables every month. That's 1 to 2 months out of the year where you're working without paid. And confused clients often lead to not only them not paying you, but also missed referrals. And that's losing business when you could be dramatically expanding. So we're going to talk about how you can prevent all of these in your contracts. Leak number one, your money moves must be spelled out in your contracts. I often have founders come to me and they don't want to push back on the big clients because they say, this is a really big deal for us and I don't want to lose them. But the fact is, you're the expert. You set the terms. You get to say when you're going to be paid, how you're going to be paid. So what does this look like in your contracts? First, a deposit is due before your work ever begins, so that once you start the researching, drafting, providing those consultations, sitting in meetings, you already have some leverage built in case something goes awry with your clients. But after that, how do you ensure you're paid? Don't wait until you've completed everything in the project to get paid. You want your deliverables to be tied to milestones, whether that's a date, whether that's project phases. You want to make sure that you're getting paid every step of the way so that you know that your client is right there with you and they're still committed to your success. I have clients say that, well, we just deliver a report. There's nothing in the middle to tie those payments to. But when you really break down what your project includes, you have to do research. You may create an outline. There are things that you can separate out and bring your clients into to ensure that they understand that they are being serviced for what they're being paid for, and also to ensure that you're being paid as you're doing every step of the way. You want to make sure that most clients have the invoice due date, but also have late fee triggers. That is either a date or a milestone, and then also the amount or percentage for what that late fee looks like. So if you have a 5 day grace period, put that in the contract so that on day 6, you stop working. No if and buts about it. If you are, I have a lot of clients that say, oh, well, they're a good client. I know they're going to pay, or they're a big client. They have the money. Regardless of what your personal feelings are about that client, when the next day comes outside of your grace period that is stated in your contract, one, you inform them that your late fee has been triggered. So whether that's the percentage or the amount, they are now due this invoice, which must be paid before you continue work. And so that goes into your pause of work language. Within your contract, you need to state what happens when you stop working. If your clients are not paying you, you stop. That's period blank. It is more costly to you and your business to chase after clients who you've done the work for but haven't paid than stopping mid assignment. If you have a $15,000 invoice, you've already done the work, or you're in the process of doing work and the clients aren't paying you, and then you continue working because you just assume or you believe the good in people, and it comes 30 days after you've completed your project and they're still not paying. You may have to get collections involved. You may have to find a lawyer, pay legal fees, pay for a lawsuit. All of that is exponentially more than it's halfway through the project. They haven't paid their last invoice. Just pausing and finding other revenue generating activities that you can be contributing your time to. So we're going to look at a real life example of when I first started my law firm. I was hired for a $10,000 engagement, and because I wanted to make sure my clients felt comfortable with their payments and my services as a baby attorney, as we call ourselves, my payment terms were set up 50% upfront and then 50% due within 10 days of receiving that deliverable. The initial payment cleared. I sent my services, my deliverables, and then the invoice. But 10 days after they received the deliverable, I still hadn't heard from that client. I followed up, and that client said, I'll pay you after I've reviewed all of the services. And that's not the terms that we agreed to. I had to go back and look and realize that even though I had the terms in the contract, did I want to pay the time and the money to enforce this contract? And so this is where I realized that having terms paid or tied to my milestones makes more sense. And then especially for me, since I'm a licensed professional, I can get paid 100% upfront. So this is my big trigger for licensed professionals. If your work is governed by an agency or an association that can say you can or cannot work, ensure that you're getting paid 100% upfront, because at the end of the day, if you don't provide the services they're looking for, they have a third party that can come and collect from them for you or for them. But let's say that this is a consulting firm. And how would they ensure that they're receiving their money with this type of arrangement? Instead of providing the deliverable after they finished, you want to have a client consulting call. You want to have a final engagement call. And what does that look like? You have your report pulled up and you're discussing hand in hand what your research findings are with the client so that they know you've done the work, you're completed, but if they want the deliverable, they have to pay that final payment. I find that the final payment is generally the one that is most difficult to collect upon. So the simple framework that I want you to remember is just a quick three-step process. One, receive a deposit. This reserves your capacity for the initial onboarding of the project. Two, tie your milestones, your phases, your reports, your research with your payments so that you know as you're working, your clients are going to pay you. And three, have a way to ensure that you're paid for that final last step of your support. And I often advise my clients to structure payments where 75 to 90% of your payments have already been received when you provide that final deliverable, that final service, so that if you do have to provide the deliverable before getting the final payment, you're not out tons of work because you are waiting for this last payment. So this is exactly the kind of structure that we build inside the right boardroom, and that's more details to come at the end. Next, we're going to talk about scope creep. I see so many founders provide their contracts to me and say, I just want you to review it and make sure that I have everything I need. And generally, what I see, their scope creep is incredibly vague. First and foremost, you need to list out what your scope of work is. That includes not only what all is included in your services, but what's not included in your services. For service-based founders, mostly your contract can be a master service agreement. It determines all of, from beginning to end, how you are going to run your engagement with your client. And I suggest having an addendum, a scope of work, some type of attachment that lists in plain English, not legalese, what your deliverables are and what is not included in very distinct sections. This allows your client, because let's be honest, clients don't review contracts until there's some sort of dispute, something is wrong, and they're wanting to make an argument or dispute. But this allows your client to come to your contract and say, okay, I see what I'm getting. I see what I'm not getting. So if they have any questions or want to ask something more, they know exactly where they stand. But also a revision cap. Unless you're offering unlimited revisions, you need to include what your cap is for your services, whether you're drafting a deliverable that's like a report, how many additional research rounds are included in your deliverable. If you are having consultation services where you're having meetings, how many meetings before it reaches out of scope? Whatever your service is, you need to think about what is the extent to which you are willing to provide your time to make sure that your clients are happy before extra fees apply, and state that very clearly within your contract. But lastly, your change order path. Too many times I hear clients saying, I have tried my best to make this client happy and they're just not satisfied. And I'm going above and beyond the project that I thought I was going to do to make them happy, to make sure that I just want to get paid and be done with this. Their change orders were not clearly defined. And a change order is anything outside of what you typically offer that is going to stray from the path that your client may ask for. And you want to make sure that you not only have how they can ask, and whether that's sending you an email, filling out a form, but also how you're going to approve that change order, whether that's, again, replying to this email or having a conversation with them, letting them know what their options are, what their costs. You want to create a path from beginning to end of request to approval to ensure that you both are on the same page of what their options are and how much it's going to cost them. You want to remember that a good contract includes not only how your work gets approved and what it's priced, but everything from beginning to end that may pop up and that allows you to be able to enforce your contract. So I want to give you an example of a client, Trish. She ran a design consulting firm. She was really excited to sign this big contract and for an interior design project that was a really large house. Her contract stated that their project would include the redesign of bathrooms, living rooms, and kitchens. And that was all it said. Doors, flooring, tile was installed per the conversation that they had. As agreed with the client, those those conversations were recorded manually by hand with my client and was not something that was visually agreed upon with the client in writing. Once the doors and different flooring and I believe it was stairs were all installed, the client wasn't happy. And the client asked for new doors, new materials, and Trish, because she wanted to get paid for this project, was running around trying to reinstall everything and did not charge the client for the additional labor or the materials. So this exciting $40,000 engagement turned into $55,000 of work with $10,000 of unpaid fees. And to add insult to injury, the client threatened to sue them for leaving some work unfinished because there were unpaid invoices. And so we discussed how we can fix this situation in going forward next time. One, you want to define with specificity in your contract, like I said, instead of just bathrooms, living rooms, kitchen, the bathroom on the second floor, the bathroom down the hall, specifically have for this specific consulting firm, have a blueprint of the house and check off which bathrooms, which rooms are going to be modeled, what is the materials that are going to be used. You want to make sure that whatever you are providing, you want to have very specific measurables for what the client is expecting. So here, clarify those materials and writing them down. For each of the bathrooms, we're going to use barnwood doors and provide mock-ups. A mock-up is one of those milestones that I said at the beginning that could be tied to payments. Once she received and signed off on this is exactly what I want, great, let's create a payment. And there's nothing wrong with clients changing their mind, but you want to make sure that you get paid for the work that you have done and the work that you will do. And so in her contract, she didn't have what it looks like for the client to change their mind. Once you receive a client request that says, I want something different, I want to run this report again, I want changes that are outside the scope of work, that's when you should pause, take a deep breath, and say, well, let's look at the contract. That is the best way to enforce a well-designed contract is to have a meeting with your client and look at the contract together, stating, this is what we agreed upon, this is what you received, and here's what you're asking for. No problem. Here are your options, and this is the cost of addition. So that they know that one, what they're asking for is something different than what they've already agreed upon in the contract. Two, there's going to be an additional cost and what that additional cost is. And three, you decide together how to move forward. And then lastly, you definitely want to make sure that you have an addendum for that change and have both of you guys sign it so that this now becomes the new basis for what you're working upon. So the three things that I want you to take away from how to improve or reduce scope creep is one, what are your included deliverables? If you can't point to the exact sentence in your contract that ends your work or changes your work, your client will invent one based off of what they want, and it generally costs you more money. What are the rounds and revisions and changes that you are willing to commit to? Can your work be changed without added payments? That needs to be listed very clearly in your contract. And then lastly, out of scope requests. From the request all the way through approval, please state that clearly in your either in your addendum or in your contract. Next, informed clients start with good onboarding. I don't know if you guys have heard that medical malpractice cases are always come from when their patients don't like their doctors. The same happens across the board with your clients. When you have a rocky relationship or a rocky situation with your clients, that is when clients stop paying. So when your onboarding is weak, founders end up re-explaining the process mid-project. But when your onboarding is strong, your boundaries feel like part of the experience and not a correction. With your payments and your scope creep, those are very technical things that I encourage you to take time, really write out your workflow process from beginning to end so you can see where the gaps are in your communication with your clients. But this right here, your client onboarding and communication with your clients is really the secret sauce to preventing your revenue leaks. When you clearly communicate with your clients what your payments are, what they should expect, what they shouldn't expect, and keep them informed along the way, you reduce your revenue leaks by so much. And tying this into the previous sections, I have one of the things that I changed in my revenue model is to provide flat fee payments. The one of the biggest things about lawyers is the billable hours. You never know what your fee is going to be, but being able to clearly communicate what my prices are with my clients has reduced so many revenue leaks by at least 50%. And once I started encouraging my clients to do the same, they have had similar results. This allows your clients to understand exactly what they're paying for and what they're getting. When you tie that into the different tactics that I have stated with your scope creep, they'd have a very clear picture of what your service is. And they no longer feel like they are being left out. And so this is part of legal documentation, or this is part of documentation that is not necessarily legal, but helps in reducing your revenue leaks. So what does this look like? This isn't just onboarding is not just about going over your contract with your client. It's about having something that is very clear, plain language that's not legalese so that your clients can read and understand what they're getting. Do you need a contract that I believe that is written by a lawyer? Absolutely. That is what protects you if you go to litigation. But one of the things that I want to really make everyone aware of for founders is that contracts are extremely important for litigation. Litigation is costly. And that is something that is a tool that corporations use to be able to protect themselves. And yes, you want to protect yourself as well. But this making sure that your clients are informed is the secret sauce for founders. So what does onboarding look like? This is really goofy and it's not necessarily the most professional, but I have had great response from having an AI looking onboarding for my clients. And what does that mean? You have emojis, you have little check marks, you have little X's about what you need and don't need from your clients because your clients are not going to read your contract again until there's dispute. But this onboarding packet, if you have, yes, I'm going to read this. I'm going to put in barn doors. No, your new faucets are not included. And have that in a fun way that your clients can skim what they're getting. They know from the jump what's included in their contract and what's not without having to be upset or angry at going through that. So I want to encourage everyone to have a very fun, simple onboarding documentation that allows your clients to feel comfortable with the contract that they're signing and your services. This ties directly into your being very welcoming with your clients. And in that onboarding documentation, you want to have your timing and who owns next steps. One of the biggest things that I see as a problem is with how you get information from your clients that is necessary in moving your project deliverable forward. When you share your path of what's needed for your deliverables, for your approvals, it brings your clients into the process. And that's one of those milestone markers you can use to be paid, but they feel comfortable that you're working for them. And that is the last step is sharing, setting check-ins and making sure you're proactive at providing your clients updates so that there's no confusion, there's no surprises, and they can ask you questions along the way. So if there's a potential change order, you can prevent that before you've already done the work. So, here are a few questions that I really want you to think about a specific client that you've had from the last 6 months, one that cost you more than it paid you. And then think about these questions. Did your contract say exactly when your payment was due? Did you collect your money before the work begins? Did you have those milestones, those phases that are triggered to your future invoices? Are your deliverables in your revisions clearly written? Are they limited to what you actually wanted to do? Do they know how to request additional work or changes? Did you have a proper onboarding process to explain from day one how you were going to move through this project?